Hey. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for our Wild Birds Unlimited presentation. And I'm Pam Roman, I'm from the Sustainable Trumbull team. We're going to launch the presentation without much ado, but if you stay put for the whole duration, at the end we'll have some question and answer period. And we're also going to be raffling off a lovely prize that Chris from Wild Birds Unlimited has donated. So I won't hold up the presentation much longer. Take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Pam. My name's Chris Petherick. I'm the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited Nature Shop in Fairfield. We're located on Black Rock Turnpike next to Trader Joe's. And it's certainly my pleasure to be involved in Sustainable Trumbull's Earth Week programs here. And I appreciate being invited to present. And what I'm going to be talking about today is attracting birds and creating an inviting yard for them. And it won't be just for birds. We'll be focusing on that, but the things we're talking about today will help make your yard inviting to more than birds, but all sorts of things out in nature. So let's jump right into it here. So feeding wild birds is, well, wildly popular. Lots and lots of people feed wild birds. In the United States, based on statistics, about 1 in 6 people feed wild birds in their backyard. Interestingly, when you move into Connecticut specifically, about 1 in 3 of us here in Connecticut feed wild birds in our backyard. Like I said, it is wildly popular. Lots of people do it. And one thing we like to talk about and try to understand is, why do people do it? What's the draw of feeding birds? First of all, providing the supplemental food source can help us enjoy and connect to nature. There's a lot of nature in everybody's backyard. You don't have to take a 2-hour drive. You can just look out your window or walk through your yard and see the nature around us. Birds provide activity, song, color all throughout the year, especially right now. We're in the midst of migration right now, and we're seeing lots of new birds coming into the area that we haven't seen since last fall. I just want to take a second to talk about this first sentence here. When we feed birds in our backyard, we're providing them with a supplemental food source. We're supplementing what they get in nature. Birds forage. When they forage, they probably have anywhere from, studies have shown, 15 to 25 different spots where they gather food every single day. Our feeders are one of them. So we do like to emphasize that birds are not dependent on the food that we put out there. In addition to bringing us enjoyment and connecting us to nature, feeding birds can actually be good for us. There's growing evidence out there that shows that there are benefits to our mental and physical health from spending a little time in and with nature. Feeding birds in our backyard can also benefit the birds. And this is something where birds can receive benefits all year round, not just in wintertime, not just in summertime, but there's some benefits all year round. If you think about birds foraging, flying around, looking for food, they expend a lot of energy doing this. So having a food source that's easily available can cut down on the energy output as they look for food, can help them spend more time on their nest, can help them increase their energy intake in the wintertime. So there's lots of things about backyard bird feeding when we're providing them with a high quality bird food that can benefit the birds too. And lastly, last on this page, it's really fun and easy to do as well. So let's get right into attracting birds. How do you attract birds into your yard? Well, first and foremost, there's tons of birds out there. They're flying around. They're checking out different spots, as I mentioned a minute ago, foraging for food. And when we put a feeder or a feeding station in our yard, what we're really doing is putting food in a spot that we can easily see and we can keep an eye on, and we can see the birds better. We're bringing them to a spot that we can watch and monitor. And to do this, we're putting up a feeder, and then we need to select different types of food that we want to offer to them. Different types of birds like different types of food. Some like seed, some like nuts, suet, fruits, mealworms. So we can offer all these different things in our yard. So let's kind of check out some of these. How would we offer these out to the birds? These are two very traditional feeders. They're tube style feeders. On the left, we've got goldfinch at a Niger, or what a lot of people refer to as a thistle seed feeder. If you notice the feeder on the left, the holes are really, really small. That's because Niger or thistle is very, very small. And this will attract specifically goldfinch and housefinch, but smaller birds with smaller bills, keeping some of the larger birds at bay. On the right-hand side is another tube feeder where you've got sunflower seeds, peanuts, mealworms can actually fit in there, different types of food like that that's larger. And that's going to attract a wider variety of birds than the thistle feeder on the left-hand side. So this is one way to feed birds. Put a tube feeder out there and you can fill it with your thistle, or you can fill it with sunflower seeds, peanuts, something like that, to try to attract in some different birds in your yard. This one here, we've got a platform style feeder on the left. It's actually a glass bowl hanging. There's lots of different styles of platform feeders, but a platform feeder, you can put pretty much any type of food in, and you'll be able to attract lots of different types of birds, and lots of variety. This here is a chipping sparrow eating some sunflower seeds, but there's peanuts, there's tree nuts. You can put dried fruit in there. You can also put in suet balls. Lots of different stuff can fit in a platform feeder because it's just a wide open feeder. Negative aspect of a wide open feeder like that is it is open to the elements. So having some protection from the rain is a great way to hang this feeder. On the right-hand side is a peanut feeder. As you can see here, it's peanuts that are in the shell on this one. That's a blue jay who's taken one out of the feeder. A lot of the birds we have around here in Connecticut are going to be woodland birds. One of the reasons for that is we have a lot of old growth, mature forest in Connecticut, and that's very attractive to a lot of these woodland birds like the blue jay, the titmouse, chickadee, nuthatch, woodpeckers. One thing that a lot of these woodland birds do is they like to cache their food. So they'll come to a feeder, such as this peanut feeder on the right, grab a peanut like that, go cache it somewhere, basically saving it for later, if you will, and then they'll come back and grab another one, and another one, and another one. Blue jays, a single blue jay may cache up to 10,000 pieces of food in a given wintertime. So they can go through a lot of food. A feeder like this could be emptied in 30 minutes if you've got a lot of blue jays around. So a feeder like that is fun, can be super active, typically for a short period of time. Whereas the other feeders, like the tube feeder I had on the slide before this, the platform feeder to the left, tend to feed birds over a more extended period of time. But the peanut feeder is super fun because it can be quite a show when the blue jays find it. These are two different types of suet feeders. Again, the woodland birds love the suet. On the left, we've got a hairy woodpecker. That's a suet cage. That one in the picture in particular is actually a squirrel-proof suet cage. It's very heavy duty, but you can put suet in that. That's a suet cake, very traditional. On the right-hand side is a suet cylinder with a tray underneath it. And again, having a tray on the feeder like that is going to allow a lot of different birds to feed at it, similar to a platform feeder. Suet is something that is high in protein, high in fat. It can be fed all year round. It's a great food to put out in the wintertime because it's really high in fat. The suet that's in these two feeders here is what we refer to as super suet. It actually has mealworms in it, which increases the protein level. Lots of birds are looking for protein, especially this time of year. So many people think of suet as a winter food source for birds. It's actually a great food source all year round. And because this time of year, lots of birds are looking for fat as well as protein, having super suet in your feeders is a great way to attract in different birds. In addition to that, not all birds eat seed. So if you've got a seed tube out where you've got sunflower seeds or you've got thistle seed, you may not get all the different birds that are actually in your yard coming to that feeder. Adding a different type of food like suet can increase the variety of birds at your feeder because all birds don't eat seed, but most birds, if not all birds, need lots of fat and they'll come over to a feeder like this. So some birds that you may not see at your seed feeder that might come to a suet feeder like this would be the different types of warblers. We have a lot of warblers that come through Connecticut this time of year, either on their way to parts further north or to breed in this area. But we got about 25 different species of warblers, and a number of them might stop at your suet feeder. You'd be hard pressed to find many of them at a seed feeder, but put out some suet and you could really attract some different types of birds into your feeding station. So it could be a really fun way to increase the variety of birds you're seeing. And fruit and mealworms. We don't always think of fruit as something that birds are going to eat, but if you think about the birds coming into the area this time of year, lots of them are really bright and colorful. Look on the left-hand side here, you've got a Baltimore Oriole, and that other bird on there is a Cape May warbler, one of the warblers I was talking about. Very colorful. They're actually tropical birds. We refer to them as neotropic migrants. They're coming up from the tropics to breed up in our area. So when they come through, if you think about what their normal food source may be, it could be lots of fruits, vegetables, no, that's for us, fruit and mealworms, things like that. And offering that in your yard this time of year could be, you could be really surprised at what you might see showing up. A very bright orange bird showing up at your feeder. You've got cardinals all year round, but a bright orange Baltimore Oriole, a bright red scarlet tanager. Some of these warblers are typically, the males are really colorful, like the one that's sitting in the feeder there is a Cape May. He's yellow, black. He's got a kind of a rust colored cheek. I mean, some really interesting, colorful, fun birds. May stop and check out your feeders if you're offering out something beyond the traditional bird seed by putting some fruit. Those are orange halves, very attractive to a number of birds. There's grape jelly in those bowls that the Oriole appears to be standing on. But a feeder like that, beyond the warbler and the Baltimore Oriole, you could see orchard orioles, you could see scarlet tanagers, rose-breasted grosbeak like the oranges, gray catbirds love the grape jelly. So a lot of different types of birds that we aren't normally seeing might stop in for a bite to eat. On the right-hand side, that's a Carolina wren. They're here all year round. They like fruit, but they also love mealworms. They might eat some suet. So the feeder that he's at is also a tray style or platform style feeder. It's an open feeder. Lots of different birds can feed from it. But by adding in fruit and some suet balls, some mealworms, we're looking to pull in some different types of birds to a feeder. So these are a number of different types of feeders that we can put out. We'll put them out in a spot that we can see and monitor, maybe outside a kitchen window or a living room window, where we're spending a lot of time, something that hopefully we can attract birds right to so we can enjoy them in our yards. However, we can do other things as well. We've got our feeding station out there, so that's going to bring in our cardinals, our blue jays, some other yard birds that we have here in Connecticut. But if you think about what a bird is after, or creatures in nature generally speaking, they're looking for food. So we've got our feeders out there. They're also going to be looking for natural food sources. As I said at the beginning, the food that we put out there is supplemental to what they're getting foraging every day. So if we want to increase the attractiveness of our yards to birds, get some natural food sources, water, nesting and shelter, so habitat as well. These three things are what birds are looking for. So as we think about that, what types of things can we do to attract birds beyond putting out a feeding station with bird feeders? Native plants in our landscape. That's huge. Having native plants can really attract lots of different birds, but also different creatures. And when we're talking about birds specifically, fruit bearing, basically food producing, if you will, but berry and fruit producing plants and shrubs, nectar producing flowers. These will attract lots of birds. They'll also attract lots of bugs. If you think about our yards, what's going to make our yard attractive is all these different food sources for the birds. But where does the natural food come from? It comes from plants, but they also have to get protein in the wild. So they're looking for bugs, insects, berries. Some birds look for nectar. So birds such as your eastern bluebird, hummingbirds, warblers, cedar waxwings, The other members of the thrush family, the bluebird is a thrush, but like your robin, that's a thrush. Hermit thrush is probably one of the more readily seen thrush that we have in the area. Some of these birds aren't coming to our feeders, but they will readily come into our yard if we're offering out plants, or if we have plants, I should say, that produce fruits, berries, nuts, flowers, or shrubs that produce nectar. Not only does that provide a direct food source for our birds, but if you think about flowering trees, nectar producing plants, they're going to attract bugs into our yard as well. And one of the things we want to think about with our yard is the entire ecosystem, not just how do we attract the birds in, but take a look around and see what other types of things we can do in our yard. And native plants are a fantastic way to attract the birds, because if you think about it, birds have been coming here and living here for thousands and thousands of years, well before we were here. And what drew them to this area? What did they get used to? It's native plants. It's the different creatures such as insects, bugs, little mammals, things like that provide food, part of the food chain. All of those things have been here for thousands of years. So it's just been the last, I don't know, 100, 150 years that we've introduced other types of plants, decorative plants, things like that. But getting back to native plants in our yard, they can be beautiful, but they can be even more attractive to the birds and support a full ecosystem and food chain right in our yards. This isn't a bird, but that also loves native plants. Figured I'd show that guy in there. They love nectar producing plants, butterflies. They also need host plants. Lots of butterflies have different plants where the caterpillars will live. And then the butterflies, once they've, I know it's not called hatching, but we'll say that right now, they come out and they will be looking for different plants around here. And the more native plants, the more likely you are to get not just lots of birds, but other type of wildlife too, like butterflies. Another thing we like to talk about is don't be so neat. Let your yards have a little bit more of a natural landscape, if you will. And I'll say this, nobody needs to tell me that twice to say, hey, leave a little leaf litter. Some of those branches have fallen, pile them up into a brush pile. Don't clean everything up. What we have here is a big old stump. Tree was taken down years and years ago. You can tell it was a long time ago because the top is nicely weathered where it was cut. But that's a big tree stump. You can have that ground out and removed and cover it with grass. However, leaving it the way it is, as you can see, can become attractive to other wildlife. That tree stump is hosting lots and lots of insects and bugs, and woodpeckers love ants and termites and bugs. And this is a pileated woodpecker. And you can see he's kind of had his way with that stump. But if that stump had been removed, that would have actually removed some effectively native habitat for our woodpeckers and other creatures. So don't be as neat in your yard. Let nature kind of, take its course. It'll be great for your birds. And as long as it's something where it's not a dangerous situation, like a dead tree that's 40 feet tall or something, leave things in your yard. It's going to benefit the entire ecosystem. But we're focused on birds here today. The birds love this type of stuff. Brush piles. We've got lots of brush piles around our yard. Leaf litter, leave some of that around. Leaf litter is fantastic because what it actually does is it's going to effectively provide insulation and habitat throughout the winter time, protecting different types of bugs and larvae. And if you look at these trees here, at the base of all the trees, there's tons of leaves. The brush piles around your yard, as the wind blows, leaves will get stuck in there as well. And they provide great cover for insects. So effectively the food chain, if you will, but it also provides shelter for birds, especially in the wintertime, cold and windy, snowy. These brush piles are a fantastic spot for birds to shelter in overnight. It'll be a little bit warmer inside that brush pile than on the outside, can protect them from the weather a little bit. So having things like brush piles and leaf litter around your yard is actually going to improve the habitat for all the nature that's around us. And it's going to save you time as well. That's my favorite part of it. The more natural yard that you have, the leaf piles, the brush piles, it's going to equal more insects in your yard. Lots of birds like this American redstart, part of the warbler family, love insects. And the more insects you have in your yard, the more birds you're likely to have as well, along with potentially bats and other things. So leave some of your yard, if not all of it, more natural. It'll save you a lot of time, and it will really increase the attractiveness of your yard to all the different birds that are coming through. Lots of leaf litter. Again, didn't have to tell me twice not to clean up my yard. And what we're seeing, this is a spring warbler coming through the yard. It's a pine warbler, one of the earlier migrants that we see in our yards. He's coming through, and it's kind of fun to watch them. They will eat off of the ground. They're insect-eating birds. They will also come to suet. But what's kind of fun, they'll bounce around on the ground. They will grab a leaf with their bill, shake it a little bit, and then they'll try to look for insects underneath there. And they'll just go out throughout the yard doing that all afternoon. I was watching one yesterday for about 20 minutes. It would bounce around, grab a leaf, flip it, grab whatever fell off, go on to the next leaf. So they can be pretty fun to watch, but that leaf litter is providing them a food source. And that pine warbler, if I had a nice manicured 3-inch lawn in the backyard, probably never would have stopped in my yard. I probably would never have seen him in the yard unless I got lucky and saw it flying over or something like that. Other birds that do this are going to be the American robin, the eastern bluebird. Let's see, the eastern towhee. It's our biggest sparrow that we have around here. But if you see a bird along your fence line that's got a bunch of leaves caught up in it, kicking around, it's probably a robin or an eastern towhee. They will get into these leaf piles and they will just start kicking and, kind of digging at the ground. They'll stick their bill down there every now and then and grab a bug, maybe grab a worm. The bluebirds, you'll see them drop into the grass all the time. They love big open areas that have leaf, have taller grasses, places for lots of insects so that they can jump down in there, grab some insects, grab some food, head back to the nest box where they're, maybe have already laid 3, 4, 5 eggs, feed mom while she's sitting on the eggs, and keep doing that. And, if you get yourself positioned nicely and comfortable, you could probably sit for an hour and watch a male bluebird going back and forth from a tree branch or a nest box down into a grassy area that's been left more natural, looking for bugs. So leaving habitat more natural is a fantastic way to increase the likelihood of seeing not only more birds, just more numbers of birds, but also a wider variety of birds. It's pretty amazing when you allow your yard to go more natural, plant some native flowers, some native shrubs and trees, how quickly you can see nature really accept that and come into your yard and allow you to enjoy all that activity. And it doesn't take 5, 10, 20 acres. It can be a single backyard. You'd be amazed at if you take a 15 by 15 plot of land in your yard, let it go natural, plant some native flowers or shrubs, viburnum, dogwoods, milkweed, things like that. That little spot that you've created can become this oasis for not just the birds, but all different creatures. And it's a fantastic way to really enjoy nature. So keep that in mind. Think about that as you're getting ready for your spring cleaning, to say, hey, let's make a little bit more of this natural. And it doesn't take long, and it's amazing what you will see, whether it's a 10 by 10 plot or a full backyard. But it can be pretty incredible. Water sources are a fantastic way beyond the native plants to bring some birds into your yard. All birds need water, not just birds that like to go to feeders, but every bird needs water. So having a water source like this bird bath can be a great way to bring in some birds that you don't normally see. Here's some bluebirds. if you're lucky, you can see some bluebirds in your yard at a feeder or maybe just flying through the yard. These are all eastern bluebirds playing around in one of the bird baths. This is an orchard oriole. This is the female orchard oriole. They're actually fairly common in this area. They come in, they'll probably be here another week or two. They come in along with the Baltimore orioles, their better known cousin. But orchard orioles are fairly common. They like to nest higher up in trees. However, they need water and they will readily come to a bird bath like this or a natural water source in your yard. They'll also come to fruit and jelly. That Baltimore oriole that we saw in the photo earlier on, he's not the only oriole that likes fruit and jelly. The orchard oriole does too. Again, it's a tropical bird coming up to our area to nest. The orchard oriole here, is actually sitting on what we refer to as a mister. The back part of this photo beyond the bird bath there is kind of blurry. That's because there's mist coming out of this. Birds love that, but it also drips a little bit. And that dripping noise agitates the water enough so that the birds it'll actually help the birds find that water source. So there's an orchard oriole checking out the water, and the orchard oriole was a fairly common visitor last summer to our bird bath. Here's a bay-breasted warbler, another one of the wood warblers that I was talking about earlier. We get about 20, 25 species flying through our yards every year. And this bay-breasted warbler decided to stop into the bird bath. I've never seen a bay-breasted warbler at a feeder. However, he's sitting at this bird bath, getting a little drink. Not only do they need water to drink, but birds also need water to clean their feathers, because clean feathers allow birds to fly better. And in the wintertime, clean feathers actually insulate better. Well, they do in the summertime too. But clean feathers are really important for birds. And so they're looking for water all year round. And again, every bird needs water, so you never know what you might see in that water. There's a Cooper's hawk, rose-breasted grosbeak, both checking out the water sources. So I guess when you start to put water out as a feature in your yard, along with your food and hopefully some natural food sources, the biggest question becomes, who will you see? The Cooper's hawk is pretty neat to see at a bird bath like that. The rose-breasted grosbeak. And it doesn't have to be a bird bath like this. These are all nice because these bird baths, again, like your feeding stations, you can put them in a spot that you can easily see, easily clean and refill, replenish, and kind of keep an eye on it. However, you can have other sources too. Most houses that have basements have sump pumps. A sump pump discharge makes a fantastic water feature. Between the house I live in now and the house I used to live in, our sump pump discharge, I believe I was able to document 26 different species of warbler stopping to get a drink, because what I've done around my sump pump is I've made it into a little pool area, not too deep or anything, but there's branches around it so that they can sit on a branch and preen after they've gotten wet and gotten their drink. There's a little puddle that they can sit in to bathe, a little bit of a stream, if you will, where they can drink from it. So you got a little bit of moving water. Every time that sump pump discharges, it makes a noise and it makes flow, kind of cleans everything out a little bit too. So you've got moving water, a lot of moving water, and then you can build some habitat around it. And it's really cool. Again, this is a great time of year because we're just at the very beginning of migration and tons of stuff is coming through. Literally billions of birds migrate north from the tropics up to our area or even parts further north. And as they're flying, each day they're going to be looking for a stopover point for some food, for some water, a little bit of shelter to catch their breath before they take off and move on. But the other cool thing is, if they stop in your yard and they find food and they find water and they find a spot that might be decent for nesting, they might stop in your yard too. You can document the different types of birds that nest in your yard by keeping an eye on and watching that nature back there. But as birds are flying, they're always looking for that little green oasis. And if we create that, again, during migration especially, you just never know what you might see. So keep an eye out on those bird baths as well. And we talked about it, the shelter and the nest boxes. This is a house wren. House wrens are cavity dwellers. They look for cavities to nest in. The nest boxes that we hang up or mount, they're effectively replicating cavities that you would find in the wild, effectively a cavity in a tree. And house wrens will readily go to a box like this, looking for shelter, but also looking for nesting habitat. Tree swallows on the left, bluebird on the right. Again, cavity nesting birds. They will look for these types of cavities in order to build their family, if you will. So you've got your feeding station, you've got your water, you've got a few native plants that are producing fruit or nectar, and you put up a box like this, you're kind of hitting all the different things that a bird is looking for when it's migrating north, or it's looking to find a spot to spend a day or two while it kind of regains some strength to keep going on migration. So the more of this type of stuff that you add to your yard, the more natural your yard is, native plants, feeding stations, brush piles, nest boxes, bird baths. You start adding all these things up, and all of a sudden your yard is incredibly attractive to birds. All the different types of birds, whether it's a year-round bird like a cardinal or a blue jay that wants to make your yard their home all year, or these migratory birds that are coming through. The reason they're coming up here, they're looking for nesting habitat. So if you're providing the opportunity for them to nest in your yard by having boxes like this, having a nice canopy, a full canopy in your yard, such as taller trees, lower trees, shrubs, ground cover, nest boxes, different birds nest at different levels. Orioles love to nest high up in trees. Catbirds will nest 3 feet from the ground. Bluebirds look for cavities that are 4 to 5, maybe 6 feet from the ground. And you've got owls that could be 25 feet up. So having different levels of the canopy in your yard, offering out places for these birds to have some shelter or maybe nesting habitat. Again, these are the things that the birds are looking for. These are things that may pull birds into your yard and attract them to your yard, or keep them in your yard all year round. Again, another brush pile. That's a big brush pile there, home to lots of different stuff. Our dogs always get their noses stuck in there because something's been in there, whether it's a squirrel or a chipmunk. Lots and lots of bugs in that leaf litter around it. And this is something where in the wintertime, that is hopping. You've got your juncos, you've got your white-throated sparrows, song sparrows. They'll all go in that brush pile to get away from the elements. Come summertime, you might see one of these birds build a nest in there possibly, or just go in there to get away from some rain, some wind, or to find a bite to eat. So attracting birds into your yard, food, water sources, shelter, and nesting habitat. Those are the things that every bird is looking for. So having feeding stations out there, fruit and nectar producing native plants, an open water source, ideally all year round, and then shelter and nesting habitat, brush piles, bushes, trees, nest boxes. The more of these things that you have in your yard, the more attractive your yard becomes to a wider variety of birds. One thing I hadn't mentioned, I just want to mention it briefly here, those nest boxes, those are fantastic during nesting season. Clean them out in October or November timeframe when nesting season is done, but leave them up. They also provide shelter in the wintertime. You can put some wood chips in there or something to provide a little bit of insulation, but you will find birds in there in the wintertime as well. Not nesting, not looking to make a nest, but just to get out of the elements. Cold nights, you could see 4, 5, 6 bluebirds in a single box. Well, you might not see them, but they may use it. We've had woodpeckers kind of pack into one of the nest boxes that we left up all winter long. So it's not just, nest boxes aren't just for summertime, just for nesting season, but keep them up all year round. Again, you'll never know what you might see in there. But if you take anything away from what we're talking about today, food, water, shelter, those 3 things, providing that for the birds is what's going to make your yard super attractive to lots and lots of different birds, and a lot of those birds. You could really, it can be very interesting how much activity you can get in your yard by offering these things up. And the more of them you offer, the better for the birds and the more activity. And please, as you're planting stuff, really look to make sure it's something native to this area. That's going to make it more attractive to the entire ecosystem. So what I just wanted to mention, finally, we'll end it here. We do Zoom calls as well at the store, and on our website, you can find some links. We've got 3 different Zoom calls in the next 3 weeks or so. Next Tuesday, we're doing a Zoom call on hummingbirds. I'm going to talk all about hummingbirds. They're just showing up right now. And the link is on the website. Oops. Thought we had one more slide on there. We'll leave it here. So that concludes what I was going to talk about today. So if people have any questions, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A, but before we get to that, Chris, thank you so much for this presentation. It was terrific. Lots of good information in there. There is one question that's just come in, and then I actually have a couple.
Okay.
From Janet, she says, how much do we attract mosquitoes if we leave water in bird baths? We hear that we're not supposed to leave standing water around.
Yeah, so you don't want standing water around. With bird baths, what we do with ours is you can find things to agitate the water. There's things called water wigglers that have an agitator. So that's going to move the water around and help a little bit. But we recommend making sure that you're cleaning out, effectively refreshing your bird baths every day or 2 at the most. You know, you want clean water in there for the birds. And to your point, you don't want a bunch of standing water sitting there for a week because it will, you can get mosquitoes in there. But what we find with ours is they get pretty active. Ours are out in the sun. They'll evaporate in a day or 2 as well. But clean out your bird baths every day or 2, hose them out and refill them with fresh water. But you can find some things too that agitate that water to help with that.
A subsequent question to that is, how often should people be cleaning their feeders?
Yeah, feeder cleaning is really important. If you think about it, that's their feeding spot, like our dining room table. And we're not going to just leave that for 2 months without cleaning it. You want to clean your feeders every couple of weeks if possible. Like 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. If you've got a traditional feeder, I'm going to jump. Can I share this still? I want to go back to a slide. I want to show a feeder here. But cleaning is really important. Please do it at least once a month, if not a little bit more than that. This feeder here is what we call an EcoClean feeder. It's antimicrobial, so it helps keep the feeder fresh longer and the food fresh longer. When cleaning that, you can use soap and water because it's already antimicrobial and helping with mold and mildew. The feeder on this side here is not, and we recommend 1 to 10 bleach to water, or potentially if you're using vinegar, like 1 parts to 3 parts vinegar to water. But do please clean them on a regular basis. You don't want to pass along any kind. There's a couple types of illnesses that birds can get from feeders if they're not cleaned regularly. And we want to make sure we're not harming the birds, but enjoying the birds. Right.
Another question I had is suet. You mentioned suet and how it attracts other kinds of birds. Do you leave your suet out all summer long?
I do, yes. And when you're doing suet, you want to make sure you're getting rendered suet, not just like the suet from the butcher. And the reason for that is suet from a butcher, you can do that in the wintertime, but it will, that will go bad. It'll become rancid, especially as you get warmer. The suet that we sell, like stores sell, is going to be rendered. And so that can stay out. What happens in the summertime with that is it gets really soft, right? The melting point is about 85 to 90 degrees. So if you use regular suet like that in the summertime, it's going to get really soft and potentially melt. But there's also what we refer to as no melt suet dough. And the melting temperature there is about 130 degrees or so. And we're actually going to be switching over to that in the next couple of weeks. But you can do that all summer long then.
Right. Okay. Just for everyone who's attending today, I want to remind you, if you liked this presentation, you're going to love Thursdays, where Mary Ellen LeMay is going to be talking about the pollinator pathway. She'll also be talking about keeping leaves on your lawn and brush. Thrush love brush. Chris, you'll attest to that. Thrushes love brushes is something that I have in my head, where I try to clean up my yard a little bit, but leave some brush for some of the birds that might be coming in the woods. And then there's another bird-related event on Friday. An artist is going to be discussing how to sketch in nature. So please be sure to join us then. And now we're going to draw a name for the fabulous gift that Wild Birds Unlimited in Fairfield donated for today's event. Thank you so much, Chris. It's a lovely thing. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, a couple more questions. Are there some types of bird baths that are better than others?
So when it comes to bird baths, you're really looking for something that's going to hold water. If you're doing concrete, that's going to be porous. So you're not going to want to keep that out over the winter time, because water can get in there. When it freezes, it can crack. A concrete bird bath. Granite is carved, and those are safe. But in terms of like attracting birds or anything like that, there really isn't one that's better than another. It comes down to your aesthetics, where you're going to be placing it, how heavy they are, how easy they are to clean. Those are the things that you want to look at. But any kind of bird bath, anything to hold water is what you're looking for, and they'll all work really well. You don't want them too deep. They're not looking to go swimming. They're looking to bathe. So you don't want something that's 3, 4, 5 inches deep. 1 to 2 inches or so.
Another attendee has a question. Is there a way to discourage huge flocks of house sparrows from descending upon your feeders?
Yeah, house sparrows are tough. What you can try with house sparrows is using striped sunflower seed at your feeders. It's a bigger, harder shell, a little bit more difficult for the house sparrow to eat and break open. You can try safflower seed as well. Otherwise, what we recommend is taking your feeders down for a while. Let the house sparrows hopefully disperse and go elsewhere. But yeah, they're a little bit more difficult to keep away because they're small. So some of the things, the next question here is about grackles. Some of the things you can do to discourage larger birds, the house sparrows are small enough that they can deal with it. So try striped sunflower seed in the shell, and safflower seed in the shell might work also.
Yeah, I was using a no waste mix, and I was getting grackles, I was getting starlings, and I switched over, and it didn't solve the problem 100%, but it certainly helped.
Yeah, so the next question is about getting rid of grackles, and to that same point, using safflower seed is typically pretty effective for that. If you think about grackles, they've got, and this goes for grackles, starlings, the blackbirds, generally speaking, they've got longer, more narrow bills that make it difficult to crack open safflower shells because safflower shells are quite hard. But with grackles and the starlings, you can also put a cage around your feeder, a 1.5-inch mesh cage, can fit around your feeder and make sure it sticks out wide enough so that they can't just stick their head in and feed from it. But that can cut down on the number of birds you get as well. So to your point, Pam, it may not get rid of all of them, but usually you don't have a flock of 50 of them coming and emptying your feeders in 20 minutes if you use safflower or cages around your feeders.
Right. Okay, well, that's it for questions. This is the, I'm going to share my screen here. Hold on one sec. And we'll draw a name. Okay, so this is, Chris, is this just a hummingbird feeder with some nectar? This looks great.
Yeah, so what you've got there is, it's a gift box that has a hummingbird feeder. It has a nectar bottle to make your own nectar. It's got some sugar in there with it. And there's also a port brush to clean the feeder. We talked about the importance of cleaning your feeders. So all of that's included in there, and it's just kind of wrapped up into a nice box.
Excellent. So we're going to click to spin and pick a winner. So Anna, congratulations. Oh, wait, it went to Andrew. Sorry about that, Anna. The wheel of fortune moved to Andrew. So Andrew will be in touch via email, and we'll talk about how we'll get you your prize. And again, thank you all for taking your time out of a very busy and beautiful day for everyone, I'm sure. And again, Chris, thanks so much. Hey folks, if you're ever in Fairfield near Trader Joe's, be sure to stop in. to.
Thank you for having me. This was fantastic.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.